So just before he died for us, our Lord Jesus Christ took the bread and the wine. You hear me say this every Sunday, and he offered it up to our Lord and to God in thanksgiving. And then he gave it to his disciples and said, "This is my body and this is my blood. I'm about to sacrifice my life for you, give myself for you. This is my body and my blood. Whenever you gather, do this in the remembrance of me." The church has treated that so seriously that ever since that moment, we have used bread and wine to remember, live in, encounter the reality of who Jesus is. The common cup, the common bread, we fought about it. In fact, we continue to fight about it to this point. But it's so important that the only times that I know it was limited was during the Black Plague. When we didn't know why people were dying, we limited the use of the common cup. However, the right was returned to the laity, at least, during the Second Vatican Council. It was fought for a Protestant right that we should have the right to participate in both the bread and the wine. Limiting communion is not done lightly. And so it's not done lightly that I say that our bishop has asked us to, actually obligated us to, limit the shared cup, not communion, but the shared cup. He's asked that the priest only participate in the shared cup and to be able to limit any communicable diseases, especially COVID-19 right now, or the coronavirus. But I want to remind you during this period a couple things. First of all, taking the bread alone is still taking full communion. You don't have to take the bread and wine to receive full communion. So even though we will not be sharing the wine, you are still receiving full communion. Secondly, I want you to know that we'll be setting up live streaming for those who are particularly vulnerable. It's not an excuse to sleep in on a Sunday. It's not an excuse to say I can do church TV. But for those who are vulnerable, we do have a large percentage of our population who's vulnerable. We'll be offering that, as well as I'm asking for volunteers to bring home communion. Remember, this takes volunteer effort. This puts other people and their families at risk. So only if you are of that highly vulnerable population, I'm asking you not to participate in it unless you're of that highly vulnerable population. But we will be setting up live streaming and home communion. Nothing else are we shying away from yet. I think it's still important to gather. It's still important to be normal. It's still important to have coffee together. Unless we're told otherwise. We're obviously watching this and we're treating it seriously, but I encourage you to be sanitary, be wise, be smart, realize that there are others who might be more vulnerable than you are, so respect that they don't participate in the peace. Refrain from shaking hands, wash your hands, don't touch your eyes, don't touch your ears, don't touch your nose. But we will be remaining open. The office is open. My phone line will be open. Business as normal, besides the common cup around these parts. I do ask you to remember that this is Lent. We have not yet fixed, or human ingenuity has not yet fixed the problem of human mortality, as Lent reminds us. Lent is a season when we remember the great promise of the gospel is not that we will live long, healthy, nice, simple lives, but that we will live in eternity in the presence of God, and that there is nowhere safer than in the arms of God. There's a whole community that's terrified out there. This is opportunity. Through every time the world has been scared, the church has brought peace. I pray that this be no different. The world is terrified. I pray we show them the peace that comes from knowing the Lord. And I pray for that blessing be upon you on this day.